Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. Let's get into our top stories this morning, starting in South Africa, where its President Cyril Ramaphosa has spoken out against the scourge of teenage drinking in South Africa. Addressing the nation in his weekly newsletter from the president's desk. It's interesting. He acknowledged that youth drinking is a challenge which needs attention.
His words come in the week where the 21 teenagers who died at a tavern in Eastern Cape are being buried. The incident has brought the issue of youth drinking and stalled legislation that could reduce alcohol into sharp focus.
Well, the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance in South Africa says the president needs to strengthen liquor legislation in South Africa to reduce alcohol harm. Earlier, the Southern Africa Alcohol Policy Alliance, SAAPA, Executive Director Maurice had this to say.
The issue is not really only about underage drinking. It's about the general legislative environment in which we find ourselves, which doesn't actually do enough to protect people from alcohol-related harm. So the incident in Nyobeni and the reality of teenage drinking is merely a symptom of a much deeper malaise that exists in the country that can actually really only be addressed by effective legislation implemented from government on the one hand, and on the other hand is the empowerment of people within communities to have a meaningful say over when, where, and how alcohol is sold in their communities. We are not happy that he didn't mention legislation at all, and that in many ways he shifted the responsibility for dealing with the issue of alcohol-related harm to the community. For example, one of the things that he said in his speech, in his message, was that communities must do more to engage with the authorities to try and ensure that those who break the law face the consequences. Well, the reality is that people of Nyobeni made it clear in a number of media reports that we read that they had attempted on many occasions to raise the issue of the Nyobeni tavern with the authorities around the issue of underage.
Pretty interesting. And of course, we had a conversation about this sometime last week with I think one of the representatives from the South African Alcohol Policy Alliance. Very interesting. And also just to quickly mention that it's an interesting thing to see that the president of South Africa has a weekly newsletter where he addresses the citizens on happenings across the country. It's the most basic, that certain countries don't have. The interest of a president to at least, address his people every week.
I mean, he has certain issues against him. Conversations about corruption and the mismanagement of funds. There's a lot of issues that have been leveraged against him. And unfortunately, whilst we can't go into that, we must applaud this. I think it's brilliant that he has to address the people every week. But another thing that he also mentioned in his newsletter is making reference to the fact that this has happened before. The fact that it happened in Durban in 2000, it happened in Kielisha in 2015. So what we're seeing is that this is something that has happened over and over again. The question is, what has been done? The National Liquor Act provides that any establishment that sells to teenagers under the age of 18, should be punished. But what has been done in that regard? We can't keep having
have been learned?
Exactly, what lessons have been learned? We can't keep having the same stories happening over and over again. And the sad thing is, a lot of the parents who lost their children in Kielisha as well as in Durban, what they were talking about was the fact that seeing this triggered them. There was a mother who said she broke down and was crying, because it just feels like they're reliving the same thing again. Really sad story
Really hurtful.
there.